Hi, this is Edward Troxel. In today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at a series of events on a track and see what it would take to fit them inside of a selection area. So we're going to move them and resize them so that they all fit evenly across this selection area. We're going to look at a couple of different ways. The first one, we're going to fit everything exactly, and we'll then look to see what some potential issues there are with that. And so let's take a look and see what we need to do to fit everything inside of a selection area. For this script, we've got all of our standard stuff down to myVegas equals Vegas, and then I need to get the selection length from myvegas.transport.loopRegionLength, and that is the selection area on the timeline. Then I'm checking to see if the selection area is less than one frame. Then I'm going to put in here, please create a selection area. That way, if a selection area has not been created, we've at least given them the warning that it needs to be created. Then the return on here will break us out of the program so that they can add a selection area. If the selection area has been created, then I'm going to create me a list of events. So I created a list of type track event, and I'm calling it events. And then it's a new list of type track event. Then for each track, my track in myvegas.project.tracks, then for each track event in mytrack.events, if the event is selected, then I'm adding that event to this events list. Then after I have the list populated using this, then I get my selected count from events.count. That's how many items are selected. Now, in the intro, I mentioned that we are doing everything on one track. Technically, this is looking through all tracks to find the selected events. So if you had selected events on multiple tracks, it's going to count them too. So I wouldn't do that unless you want to go in and add some double checking to make sure that you're processing each track individually or something of that nature. So here we have the selected count, and then we get a double, which is going to be the total length that we are looking for, and we're going to get that from our selection length, and we're going to convert that to milliseconds. So now we've got the total length in milliseconds. Next, we're going to get our time code, and the individual length, we're going to get a time code dot from milliseconds, and we're just going to take the total length divided by the selected count. So we're just taking this total length right here divided by the number of them that we have, and that will be the individual length for each one. And then another time code is going to be our start time, and that's going to be myvegas.transport.loopRegionStart. And then we simply go through the events that we have in our list. So for each track event in the list of events, we're going to set the event.start equal to start time. Then we're going to set the event.length equal to the individual length that we calculated up here. And then we're going to set the start time equal to this new events, positions, and length end. So we're going to now, the next event will start at the end of this first event. And then we have the rest of our closing code here, including our entry point. So let's take a look at this and see how it works. Here I have 5 events on the timeline, and I've created a selection area. I have only the video portion of these events selected, and we want them all to fit inside of this selection area. So now you can see the 5 events start at the beginning of this selection area and end at the end of the selection area. The problem is, let's go in and put our cursor between the first and second events. Now if we zoom in tight, you will see our cursor is on a frame boundary. The end of this event is not. If I move right 1 frame, you see it jumps over where the frame boundary is. So you may or may not want it to hit a frame boundary. The problem is, video really should hit a frame boundary, but sometimes you may be able to work with it not hitting a frame boundary. I mean, that's up to your application. But in this particular case, it does not hit a frame boundary, but it does fill it completely. So let's go back and take a look and see what we can do to force them to end on frame boundaries instead. So everything is exactly the same down to where we determine the total length. Now to get the individual length, we want to go timecode.from milliseconds and total length divided by selected count, just like we did before. But now we want to snap to frame. The snap to frame wants the frames per second. So we're going to get that from myvegas.project.video.framerate. That's the only change we're making to this, is this one line right here. And so now let's see how it runs with this change. Now, as we zoom in on the timeline, you will see that now it does not end at the ending point like it did before. In fact, it is 2 frames off. But if we look at every one of the other points, let's just go to any random one here, we will see that these are now on a frame boundary. So here we've seen 2 ways that we can fill up a region with selected events on the track, and this will fill the region as full as possible if we are making sure that it hits a frame boundary, but it will be at totally full if we do not worry about frame boundaries. So we've seen how we can force it to hit a frame boundary as well as work without hitting frame boundaries. So I hope you like this tutorial. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.